We are back on the Frazer Smith Show, presented by the accident attorney, sweetjames.com. Been hurt in an accident, call 1-800-9-MILLION. Joining me right now, my old pal, very talented international comedian, Tom Rhodes. Tom,
Frazer Smith, my brother. How are you?
Good to see you, buddy. Great to see you.
So good to see you, man.
Yeah, man.
I am hiring a social media company to help me with, content and posting and all this good stuff. And I've been looking through, we lived through the VHS period, but then there was from 2000.
I'm still there.
From about 2000 to 2015 was the DVD era.
Right.
So I have this box full of CDs that I've never looked at. So I've been popping them in. I got 15 years of Ice House sets.
Wow. I'm sure
and you're the MC on all of them. And you look fantastic. You're always wearing a suit, always handsome.
Man, that's
looking
nice.
great, and giving me the most buttery, loving introduction.
Well, I'm a big fan of your stand-up comedy, and we've been buddies a long time. I got a couple old stories I want to ask you later about Vegas, but I want to start at the beginning. Orlando, you're right?
Yeah, I was born in Washington, D.C. My family moved to Orlando. Actually, Oviedo, Florida, right outside of Orlando, when I was 12. So I grew up there, and I started doing stand-up there.
Let's tell the Jay Leno story. I love that story about in Orlando, right?
Yeah, he, I knew I wanted to be a comedian since I was 11. And I became a student of stand-up comedy. And I worshipped Carson and SNL and all that stuff. So Jay Leno, I think I was 17. I just started doing open mic nights in Orlando, and there was a jazz club in Winter Park, which is like the Beverly Hills of Orlando.
Right.
It was called Cheek to Cheek, and Jay Leno was performing there, and I wasn't old enough to get in, and I certainly didn't have the cash to pay for the ticket, but I was determined to somehow sneak in. And so I went, and I was in one of the backside of the building, and there was an open door, and it turned out to be the door to the dressing room. And it was a little tiny dressing room, and then there was he had just been introduced, so the dressing room was empty.
So you got his wallet.
Well, I tell you, man, he had a big garbage can full of beer and ice in it, and. I helped myself to one of those.
Sure.
And I could watch the show through the curtain. And he was standing on stage maybe 1 or 2 feet in front of the curtain. So I was watching the front row audience's faces through his legs.
Wow.
While he was on stage. It was pretty awesome. And Jay Leno in the 80s was kind of a dangerous, edgy political
He was
comedian.
back then, you're right.
People forget that. And, I worked I opened for Jay Leno last week at Flappers.
Oh, did
and
you?
I mentioned that to him. And he was like, I don't think I was ever that. No, in the 80s,
he was edgy.
He was a dangerous, edgy
Remember, you would
political...
go on Letterman, too, and he would have Jay's beef.
Yeah.
And he would have some
That's
edgy
right.
kind of takes, right?
That's right. And he was always political. So Jay Leno came off, and he sees me that I'm there, and he's
Stowaway.
Yeah, stowaway, exactly. And he's like, "Hey, who are you? What? He was surprised, and I told him, I'm an eager little, teenager, and I'm like, Mr. Leno, I just started doing open mic night comedy, and I'm a comedian. I'm a big fan, and he was so kind and gracious, and the man just came off stage, and he let me ask him all these questions about. How do you start out as a comedian, and what are the steps you should take, and how do you develop material? And he was so kind and patient, and I'll never forget how wonderful he was to me.
He's a gracious guy, yeah.
And then 1996 to 1997, I had a sitcom on NBC called Mr. Rhodes.
Mr. Rhodes.
Had long hair, played a school teacher.
Yeah.
And I got to be a guest on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno, and I told him that story.
On the Tonight Show.
Yeah, and the funny thing was, he told
great.
me if you wanted to be a comedian, you had to be in New York or Los Angeles. So I moved to New York City when I was 20 years old, and I wasn't ready yet, and it turned out to be the worst year of my life. I was starving.
You got
and-
Jay.
I did.
You got Jay Leno to
but
blame
I got
for
to
that
laugh
too.
about it on the Tonight Show.
Sure.
And I think he's a wonderful guy.
Did he remember?
He is a great guy. Did you remember the night?
He did. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome, man. So when did you come to Los Angeles?
Well, this is my third time living here. I never thought I would live in Los Angeles ever again. Twice I left this town going, I hate everybody in it.
I said that this morning.
But I love it now. I've been here 10 years, and I think I've traveled all over the world. I think it's one of the greatest cities in the world.
It is a great city, and we want to talk about all your travels because you are really a well-traveled comedian. And also I want to talk to you about Vegas. You know, we had some fun in Vegas. Mm-hmm. We're sober now, but back then, you are an international sensation, my friend.
Yes.
You know,
thank you for noticing.
No, I'm always impressed with that because people love to travel, but a lot of times don't have the chance to. And you have had that, and stand-up comedy afforded you that. You were able to get out there and do some traveling and play all over Europe, and you actually had a talk show in Amsterdam.
Yeah, well, you know, when I had my after my sitcom on NBC only lasted for 1 year. And when that finished, I looked at because I made a ton of cash.
Right.
And I looked at the money I had as my NBC artist grant.
Uh-huh.
So I moved back to New York City because I had lived there, broke when I was 20, and I always swore if I ever had any money, I'd live there with style. But then I also started taking trips to London with this money. My friend Rich Hall was in there.
Ah, Rich, yeah.
So he coached me on how, you don't go to the best clubs first. You go to the peripheral rooms and you get your sea legs, what it's like to perform in front of, an English audience. And then once I got in with the best clubs in London, that was like the key to the world for me. Then I started doing gigs all over England and then all over Europe and then all over the world. And I performed in Amsterdam. There was a great club there called Toomler, and I fell in love with a Dutch woman, and I moved there. And there was tons of gigs in Europe, and the relationship didn't work out because I was partying too much.
Well,
and she was from like a small village in the north of Holland, and she wanted to settle down and have babies. So she broke up with me. And I was going to move back to the United States when these people from this Dutch television network were looking for an American to host a late-night talk show.
Wow.
And they saw me at Toomler. I did the audition, and I got the job.
How about that?
So I got to stay in this little country that I had fallen in love with and be on television.
So it was a typical late-night, kind of like a Jay Leno type format?
Exactly. And, I grew up watching Carson and Letterman and Jay Leno, and so to be the guy coming out from behind the curtain in the $5,000 suit, and then you stand on the X and you give the 5-minute monologue, and then I sit down and I bantered with my musical sidekick, a guy named E-Life, who was from Rotterdam. He was Holland's highest-selling hip-hop recording artist.
Sounds like a hip-hop artist, yeah.
Yeah, and it was the same format. There'd skit, and then a guest, and then a skit, and
that's the format.
It was wonderful, and I got to film.
Did you enjoy it?
My favorite part of the show was I got to. The charm of the show was I was an American experiencing. Or I was a foreigner experiencing Dutch culture. So every episode I would film a 5-minute film where I would experience something of the culture. Like one day I spent with a Dutch farmer.
Right.
And I walked into an electric fence. He said, look out for the electric fence in Dutch, but I don't speak Dutch. So
comedians never know about electric fences.
And, I got to cover the prime minister debates and just all these wonderful things.
Oh, cool. That's awesome, man. That is really awesome. And it was in English, though, right?
Yeah, and then the show was subtitled in Dutch. Okay. And all of their celebrities could be interviewed in English.
Okay.
And everybody it was like a little miniature dollhouse version of American show business. Like everyone was like, okay, this is the Pamela Anderson of Holland, and this is the Howard Stern of Holland. Like,
and were they all from Holland, the guests, or did you have an occasional?
Most all of them. We had Steve O of when the Jackass movie came on, and I went out with him and partied with him.
Oh, sure.
And he disappeared for 2 days. And MTV was running these bulletins like Steve O is missing if you've seen him because he was like missing all this stuff.
That happened to us.
The day he was supposed to do
our show, and it was the day he climbed up the thing.
And then he goes on then he turns up, and then he goes on the Entertainment Tonight of the Netherlands, a show that was called RTL Boulevard. And they're like, you disappeared for 3 days. Where were you? And then he tells the story about being on my show. And like, Tom's a great guy. And we went out and we did all these drugs. And I'm like, Oh my God! He
Wow.
like said it.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah,
He's
thanks.
not a PR.
Well, you know,
kind of guy.
speaking of which,
He's sober now too, by the way.
Oh, I know,
Yeah.
I know, and I love him.
And
Now he did that to us though. The same thing. He was supposed to be on our show. And we kept promoting that he was going to be on, and there was the night he got in Hollywood. He climbed up to the top of the
On the way to our show, he
on
said
the way
it
to
was
the
a
show. He
crank.
goes, "I might as well climb this
Crank.
fire truck and protest something." All right,
Whales.
so
I think it was a whale.
speaking of partying, because we all did back in the day, do you remember the night we went with Brian Regan after the show at Brad Garrett's club?
When we drove around in the limousine
limo.
all night.
Yeah, sent a limo.
Brian was great. Brian Regan, I started in Florida. So Brian Regan, I did a ton of one-nighters with him, like as starting out in Florida. He'd be the headliner, I'd be the feature act, and he always worked clean. Even like if we were doing like a tough biker bar in Daytona Beach. So he's one of my oldest friends in comedy.
Great comedian too, right?
Yeah. One of the greatest,
Yeah.
and clean material and just absolutely brilliant. So he would hire a limousine. I've did it with him a few times in Vegas. He'd just rent a limousine and hit a liquor store. And remember, we bought all this booze, and all we did was just drive around Vegas.
And
then like occasionally we'd stop for a bathroom break or somebody needed something.
One of the most fun nights of my life
ever.
Yeah, it was really great, and I still remember one line, and I can't, because he actually turned out to he was a college football player, which I did not know. And we were talking about football, and all I remember, the line we laughed so hard and it made no sense, was, "It's always the kicker."
It is.
It is always
Right?
the kicker.
Like it's
right?
always the drummer.
Right.
Yeah, same thing, right?
That or the punter.
Yeah,
It's the kicker or the
same
punter.
thing.
One of the two.
I just remember laughing really. Well, that was really a fun night, and he was a good host, man. And did you have fun when you did the Mr. Rhodes sitcom? Or what was that
I did.
like
I mean,
for you?
it was a truckload of. It was a mountain of pressure, having my own sitcom.
Your name right there.
Name on it, but the cast was brilliant. Stephen Tobolowsky, who was in Groundhog's Day and Mississippi Burning,
he's great.
a million other
yeah.
things. Sean Weiss, Farrah Forkey, just and then Ron Glass was Ron Glass was, remember, he was on Barney Miller.
Sure.
Right.
And that was one of my favorite sitcoms of all time. And I had never acted before. So it was really interesting. So Ron Glass played my nemesis.
Oh.
And then my love interest was this woman, Farrah Forkey, a great actress, had been in a bunch of things. But I didn't really feel warm to her. I wasn't crazy about her. So it was interesting that, and then like Ron Glass and I became like great, wonderful friends. So it was really, I had never acted before. And then so like the person I didn't like, I had to pretend like I was in love with. And then the person I really liked, I had to pretend like I didn't like.
That's acting.
Tremendous acting.
Yeah,
Tremendous skills.
Now, would you be interested in doing a TV series today?
I'd love to do
series?
more acting. I've done a little bit through the years, and I loved NBC. I really felt that NBC was like the home of American stand-up comedy. Everything I grew up watching, all the sitcoms and the late night talk shows that and SNL and all the my university of comedy was watching NBC. So I really felt like I was playing for the New York Yankees.
Yeah.
When I
Back
had
then,
the
NBC had
sitcom.
all the big shows.
And then I didn't have any control over it. So they took 4 of my jokes for the pilot. Everyone loved the pilot. It becomes a series. And then they decided to get
Writers.
the students got older from the pilot to the series, and the focus became on the kids. And then they just had me give nice life advice to the kids. They wouldn't really give me any jokes. And remember, I was skinny and I had long hair.
Yeah.
So it was all these hair jokes that were
You were like
directed
the unconventional teacher.
the rebel in the stuffy prep school. So, and I love books and literature, and I thought it was cool being an English teacher, but it was every hair joke you could imagine. Hey Fabio, hey Cream Rinse, hey Kenny G, So
Well,
Not
it
Kenny
wasn't
G.
Kenny G kind of look.
But with a lot of
he
distance,
said it, I didn't.
I'm really proud of it. I thought there were some really good episodes. I thought there were a lot of episodes I thought the writing was weak, but there were some really great episodes.
And you think you learned your acting
Yeah,
chops
it really.
and-
I wish I could have kept going forward, and to have your own sitcom with your name on it is
That's pretty awesome, man.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah,
so.
it really is, and you did a great job. Now,
but I felt like I really wanted to hit a home run for NBC because I loved them
you love
so
the
much.
network.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully you'll get another chance with another series.
Oh, you're a wonderful man.
You know, you're a well-traveled comic too, and you've played everywhere. How about a weird gig? I'm sure there were plenty. Is there one that stands out?
I've done wow. I mean, I did a little tour of Thailand last year, and there's a club in Bangkok, a great proper comedy club. But then I did a little tour, and like Hua Hin was old, drunk British tourists, and they were all like plastered before the show started. So like things like that aren't very much fun.
Yeah,
but
those can be
I've
weird.
performed in Mongolia twice.
Is that right? Really?
And in Ulaanbaatar, the capital, there is a great, wonderful comedy club. So Ulaanbaatar, people for short who live there call it UB City. So it's called UB City Comedy Club. And normally when I play in Asia or Europe or somewhere, it'll be like half locals that speak English and half international expatriates.
Expats.
In Mongolia, it's all Mongolian audience. They all speak English. They scream their heads off with laughter. I think Mongolians are like among the most attractive people on the planet. They've got these high cheekbones and these
beautiful women,
chiseled-looking faces, and just. They're so thrilled that someone has come there. So the local comedians,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Took me out to Genghis Khan's 13th century campsite and just.
I thought you were going to say Mongolian barbecue.
It's different. It's better there.
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah. What we've been taught.
They don't call it Mongolian. They just call it.
No, and they don't call them yurts either. They call them gurs. Those little round white tents.
Oh, okay. Wow, what an experience that.
Genghis Khan gave the world pants and ice cream.
Well, that's a lot.
What more
that's
do you
a
need?
lot. Yeah, you really don't need anything more.
How many
we can even do
championship
without the
titles do you
pants.
need?
Yeah, also, well, you went from the UBC, and now you probably play down in the LBC.
Yeah, once in a while. Well, only when I do Mel Garcia's show.
Well, Mel's show.
Yeah.
That's a plug for Mel.
That was very nice.
Yeah, no,
Speaking
it's
of
true. That is the only time that I play there is when I do Mel's show.
Yeah, that's great.
Speaking of that, you're coming up in. You're going to be doing.
Yes, you're going to be doing the Hollywood Laugh
Factory with you.
Yeah, we have. Thank you, Mel, for reminding me.
When is that? The 17th.
The 17th, Thursday night. It's going to be a great show, and we're really glad you're on the lineup.
Frazer, I love you so much. You're one of my favorite people in comedy. You're so classy. I've had some whatever. You've always been a true friend.
I want to go to the whatever.
We are good buddies, and
Let's go to the whatever.
And you're a great comic, and these shows have really been taken off. Thankfully, the
international
Honda
ones too.
The Honda blue shirt.
Well, I'm looking at the 15 years of those Ice House DVDs that I had, and like you're really like the face of Los Angeles comedy.
Well,
aside from your many years in radio, like you're just a perennial, brother.
Well, I'm
the
thank
best
you, buddy.
clubs.
I appreciate
you've
that.
been emceeing, and just you kill me. You always have topical material and
a
the
finger
joke.
snap.
Do you have any jokes on the Diddy outcome?
I do, but I don't know if I can tell them here.
You can snap your finger for us.
Well, I can do that. Yeah. Yeah, I better leave that Diddy joke off.
Pete did it. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was
Although I did have one about his baby oil. Did I think I could say?
There was a great meme little video I saw like months ago, or when the whole thing started, when it came out about the baby oil. You know that Japanese show where like people are doing these like
Squid Games.
well, no, like they're doing like the little obstacle courses.
Right.
And like there was one, and it was like this incline, and there's all this like water coming down, and people, it's too slippery for the people to climb, and they keep like falling. And the little line said, the police trying to get in to break up one of Diddy's freak off parties.
Yeah.
Because of all the baby oil.
Yeah. Well, my joke was, remember the good old days when you could buy baby oil and people didn't think you were going to a freak off?
That's good.
They found 1,000 bottles of baby oil. I go, why doesn't he use some of that to try to slip out of jail? Those are my P. Diddy jokes.
I like it.
Yeah, man.
I like it.
Tom Rhodes, so good to see you, buddy.
I love you, Frazer. I love you too, Mel.
Love you, brother. See
And
you on the 17th.
we'll see you
yeah.
July 17th at the
at the
Hollywood
Laugh
Laugh Factory. We're going to rock that bitch.
Hooray for humanity.
All right. Thank you very much, Tom Rhodes. Frazer Smith Show. Thanks for joining us. We are presented by the accident attorney, sweetjames.com. You've been hurt in an accident. Call 1-800-9-MILLION.